Hey, everybody, and welcome to this month's book club discussion. We have with us Heather Weber, the author of this month's. Okay, we're recording, and I'm not going to start over. The author of this month's book, The Lights of Sugarberry Cove, which I very much enjoyed, and know a lot of you did as well. Heather is the USA Today best-selling author of more than 30 novels. Wow. She's twice nominated for the Agatha Award. Heather loves to read, drinks too much coffee and tea, birdwatch, crochet, and bake. She currently lives near Cincinnati, Ohio, and is hard at work on her next book, and we'll hear more about that in a moment. So without further ado, welcome, Heather. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for choosing Sugarberry Cove for your book club. I
You know
love that
what?
you did.
I really enjoyed it, and I know a lot of folks did too. And it just popped on my radar as we were choosing books for this year. I think someone in the group suggested it. Maybe a couple of people did, and we usually just kind of have a period of time in January when we talk about what we're going to read this year, and everybody suggests books, and several people suggested yours, and I'm happy they did because I really enjoyed this one. So I noticed on your bio that you live in southwestern Ohio now,
Mhm.
but I recall reading somewhere that you have nightmares about tornadoes every spring. I do too. I
Mhm.
have my whole life. It's the strangest thing. I've
Yeah.
never experienced one. Well, okay, I did, but that's another story later. I'm fine. Anyway, I blame the Wizard of Oz. Are you from the Midwest originally? Where are you from?
So my dad was in the Air Force when I was little, so I kind of grew up a little bit of everywhere when I was really young, and mostly in the Southwest. I was born in Utah. I lived in Las Vegas for a while, but my parents were both from Massachusetts, and we eventually moved back home after my dad got out of the Air Force, back home. So it was really interesting having my Southwest accent going to Massachusetts, where so I had like the R's meet the Ahs, and I got a Midwest accent out of it because so that kind of met in the middle. Um, but so we lived there I graduated high school there, and not long after we moved to Cincinnati. So we've been here 27 years, 27
Wow.
years now.
Okay. So
Yeah,
Cincinnati's home now. Okay.
Cincinnati. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, The Lights of Sugarberry Cove is your 32nd, 33rd novel?
It's up. I think it's either 31 or 32. I think it might be
That's
32.
insane to me.
Yeah.
Okay. So before we dive in, are all of your books in the same genre, women's fiction with magical realism, or are some of them another genre? What all have you got in your library?
They're kind of all over the place. I started with romance, historical romance. My first book was published in 2002, and it was a trilogy set on a steamboat going down the Ohio River. And it had a mystery element in it, and I really loved that mystery element. So from there, I started writing mysteries, but my mysteries had romance in them. And then in 2007, I started writing mysteries with a little bit of magic in them. I had a psychic matchmaker series. And from there, I realized how much I liked having a little bit of magic in my books. And I went way into the magic deep end with witches. I had two series written about witches, lovable witches, as Heather Blake. And then but during the one of my witch series, there's 9 books in that series, I realized that my characters were kind of taking over the story, their emotions and their journeys and their it wasn't so focused on the mystery anymore, and that's not really a good thing when you're writing mysteries. So when the publishing house dropped a lot of their cozy line, I had a decision to make whether I wanted to write another whole series or make a leap into single title, and I decided to take a chance and take the leap, and I'm glad I did. So now I write books where there's romance, mystery, and magic that all focus on the characters and their emotional journeys. So
That's awesome. So
yeah.
this is your third single title, is that right?
This is the third single title. Yep.
Okay, well, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Okay, so I love your list of 50 things on your website. We actually have a lot in common. I can't whistle either, and I have a really bad memory. We've already talked about that a
Mhm.
little bit.
Mhm.
I noticed we also have a couple favorite authors in common. I'm a huge fan of Jocelyn Jackson.
Mhm.
We're actually reading one of her backlist titles next month. Have you always loved Southern authors, or did you discover them when you fell in love with Alabama? And I may be getting a little ahead of myself, but tell me about
I
falling in love with Alabama and Southern
I've
authors.
always loved them, and I always say I'm kind of Southern at heart, and I joke with friends that maybe I was Southern in a previous life or something. That I've just always kind of been drawn to it, and I don't quite know why. And it's one of those mysteries of life that that kind of keep you going. Like, okay, all right, I'm just going to follow this and see where it goes. But the first time I went to Alabama was in 2007. Um, I had just started my series, my Lucy Valentine series, which is the Psychic Matchmaker series, and I was down there for a book conference in Birmingham, and they had a sister conference down in Wetumpka, and I had rented a car to drive from Birmingham to Wetumpka, and just somewhere along that road, on that trip, past all the cornfields and the rusted out buses and the cute farmhouses and the kudzu, and I fell in love with it, and there's something about the land down there that felt like home to me, and I can't quite explain it. I don't quite know why, but I have a friend who says it's your place. She said
Right.
everybody has a place where they kind of feel like it's home to them, and that's your place. And I'm like, it is. So I decided if I couldn't live there, and I couldn't because my husband's job was up here, um, then I would write books set there. So I actually have a mystery series set there. My potion books are set there. Um, and when I had the chance to write the single titles, I decided I would go back. So I'm happy to visit there all the time now, even if I'm sitting here in my office.
So is Sugarberry Cove, is that a real place? Is it based on a real place?
No, none of my towns have been based on real places, although I mention real places so readers can get a good feel for where the towns are. So for Sugarberry Cove, I made mention of Hoover. So you kind of know you're down there near Birmingham area. I actually, if you look on a map, I kind of just plopped it right where Oak Mountain State Park is. And they have a lake there. It's not quite the same lake as Sugarberry Cove, but um, that's right where you would find it on a map, in my head at least. And in my
Right.
Blackbird book, that's set in the mountains where Mentone would be, and Buttonwood is set down where Alabaster would be. So I
Okay.
like to have little guideposts for people so they kind of know where they are, but even though they know it's a fictional town.
Right. Right. So are you a lake person?
I am a water person, a water and a mountain person, really. There's those memes that go around like which would you choose, the lake house or the mountain
Mhm.
house, and like don't make me pick.
Right.
Like I want the lake at the base of the mountain. So um, we are always trying to decide where we want to retire, and it's like ocean or mountain, ocean or mountain. But I'm happy on a lake. I'm happy in the mountains. Nature, really, I love it. So.
Right. Right. Um, I have the same issue. I don't know where I want. I mean, I love the coast,
Hmm.
but I love the mountains too, and
Yeah.
it's a hard decision. But
I
anyway,
agree. I grew up on the coast, just south of Boston, and
right?
there's nothing like that smell of ocean water. There's just not. Um,
No, I
but
agree.
it's a little cold up there. I don't know.
I hear you. Well, I like warmer beaches. I'm drawn to the South Carolina coast and the Florida
Mhm.
coast, and well, mostly the South Carolina coast. But anyway, we spend a lot of time, not a lot of time. We spend our vacations in St. John when we can.
Oh,
So
nice.
I'm a beach person, but I'm not
Mhm.
sure if I want to actually move there and be there full time. I'm afraid I might take it for granted a little bit. I don't know. We'll
Yeah.
see. Okay, so The Lights of Sugarberry Cove is a sister story, at least to some degree, which I love. Do you have a sister? I do. And she's told me repeatedly she does not want to appear in novels. But then she seems disappointed when she's not sisters. So are Sadie Wade and Leela based on people that you know at all?
No, I don't have a sister. I only have an older brother. I have a sister-in-law, two sisters-in-law really, because my husband has a sister too. So I never grew up with that kind of relationship, but I'm fascinated by it, and I love sister books, and I read a lot. So a lot of it is pulled from things I've read, people I know who have sisters. As authors, you kind of pick up little tidbits and you store them away for future use. I'm just like that. So,
Right. No, I get it. How about Mama? Did you have some inspiration there?
no, my mom's really quiet compared to Susanna. I do have a mom, obviously, but she's not like that. I think the only thing that they would compare with is that they both worked really hard.
Right.
When I was young, my mom worked really hard, so I was a latchkey kid. I came home to an empty house, so it wasn't like she was there and being neglectful. She just was at work. So
Right, right. It's interesting how much the story changes when you tell it from another perspective.
mhm.
So Susanna was a pill to some degree
Yeah.
through the lens of her daughter's perspectives. But the more of her story that came out, I find myself really sympathizing with her a lot more.
Mm.
And I hope my daughters don't ever write a book.
Oh, I
But
know.
it's have you ever think about telling this more from her perspective, or was it always Sadie Way and Leela's book?
I did have an idea to do, because my previous 2 books had openings at the beginning of each chapter.
Mhm.
So for Blackbird, it had a point of view of a reporter who was in town, and Buttonwood had the point of view of a judge. And I thought about doing Susanna's point of view in that kind of format, where it's just kind of a paragraph or 2 that opens the chapter. But I actually thought she was more. It was better to discover her and her motives as the book went on through her daughter's eyes, because that's who we're really feeling for. We're relating to the most are the daughters.
Right,
So I thought it would be better for that to be uncovered for the reader along with them.
right. So tell us about Fiona, the character of Fiona. Where did the idea for her come from?
Oh, she was kind of a surprise to me. She didn't start off being what I thought she was going to be. She was always in the first chapter, and I knew she would always come back. But the twist at the end of the book, where she turns out to be, Iona turns out to be Fiona, uh, co- took me a little surprise about. I was probably about a quarter way through the book before I realized because I was like, why do I keep coming back to her? And this is, I'm sure you've had it too, where you've had these little moments where you've written something and you subconsciously wrote it, but it becomes so important later on to the story.
Right,
And that's the kind of thing that happened with her, that I was like, oh, that's why she's she's still here. Because at first, when I started writing, I was gonna have Uncle Camp be the lady of the lake, which was gonna be like the big twist. Like it's not really a lady, it's Uncle Camp, and then I was like, it's like no, no, it was always her. So it feels weird
I
talking about
really
the book with people who've read it, because it's always like you're dancing around these things. Like who is she? Who
right.
is he?
And
Yeah.
I go out of my way to tell everybody that there are spoilers. So if they watch these interviews or they listen to this discussion or whatever,
Hmm.
then there are spoilers. So
Yeah.
it's fine. And really I try to do this at the end of the month so as many people as possible have read the
Mhm.
book and then we're not spoiling it for anybody, but you can talk openly about
Yeah.
the characters and the outcome and all that.
It is
So
it's kinda fun to be open with it. It's like
so do you plot all of this out? Are you a plotter or are you a pantser?
I'm a half and half. So I start a book with a vague idea. I have a beginning, I have a middle, so I know what the big turning point in the middle is gonna be. And then I have the end where I want them all to end up. Um, and the first 100 pages is just it's torture for me, honestly. It's just torture. Some authors love the beginnings, and I'm like, give me a middle
Not
any
me.
day. Um, yeah, so because I feel like I can't quite write the outline until I get to know the characters a little bit. And that all comes out just through sitting at my computer and typing and deleting and typing and deleting. So it takes a good probably 3 to 4 months just to write the first 100 pages. And then after that, the last 300 pages just fly because I know I have the foundation. And
Right.
from there, after page 100 is when I start plotting. So that's when I take out my notebook and really go chapter 10. This is what I want to happen. Chapter 11. This is what I want to happen. I don't go into the nitty gritty because I feel like that's part of the magic of writing is those things that
Right.
happen as you're writing, but I know what I want out of the chapter as I go into it.
Okay. All right. So some of the members of the Lowcountry Book Club put some questions
Oh,
online
good.
for me to ask you. So these are directly from them.
Okay.
So from Pie Pie Baltz,
Oh, hi.
Heather, how do
I
you come up
recognize
with
that name.
names for your characters? Oh, do you know Pie Pie?
Mhm.
Of
Well,
course.
online. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Online. I know so many people online that I feel like I truly know, you know.
Mhm.
Okay, so Pai Pai asked, Heather, how do you come up with names for your characters? Do you pull them from baby book names or the internet, take them from real life?
It's kind of it's a mix of everything. If I hear a name I love, I'll write it down. I actually have a little note on the note section of my phone. I have
I do too.
yeah, it's like a whole long list of names. Like every time
Yeah,
I hear, if I'm watching TV, I'm like, oh, I like that name. That's just rude.
I
Um,
do the same thing.
yeah. A lot of times, a lot of my names actually come from, I will go to the internet and I will type in things like English country villages. And this is how I get a lot of my last names for my books. The town of Wicklow, for example, is an Irish, I don't know if they call them towns or cities or counties. I think it's a county in Ireland. I'll just find it because I feel like those older names, like especially from the UK, from Europe, are
Mhm.
just a little bit different enough to be memorable, but they're just so classic that they really you remember them and
Right,
I just love using those kinds of names. So, and lots of
right.
times I'll go to, for the book I just finished, I went to typed in New Orleans street names. And so you can get first names, you can last names, you can get nicknames, you can find just about.
Right.
So when you're really stuck, when I'm really stuck, that's where I go.
Have you ever used Ancestry? I think I have family trees. It's
Yeah.
like I have some for my characters,
Hmm.
but then also I have one that's my old Charleston research tree, and it's
Oh my
private,
gosh.
so nobody can see it. But that's how I mine Charleston area names
That
because there are a lot of them.
sounds amazing. Yes. I fell down that rabbit hole a few years ago and I haven't, once I came back out, I was like, I can't, I'm like, I lost
Yeah,
myself for like a month.
I
I was like,
I do that when I'm working on our real family. So I have
uh,
to like really be disciplined and stay away from that because that's a
mhm,
huge rabbit hole for me because
yeah.
it's fun, but it's not productive at all. But I try to keep my characters there, and then also I have one that I just mine for names. So
Yeah.
anyway, but Sadie Wade, that sounds Southern to me. Did you find that
Yeah.
through one of those websites you were talking about?
I'm not quite sure where Sadie came from. It was just as soon as I started writing her, I knew she was a Sadie, which
Mhm.
wasn't her. When I sent in the proposal for the book, her name was Avery. And I was like, but as soon as I started writing her, I'm like, no, her name's not Avery. It's so weird. These weird things
She
happen to
says
us
her
all the
name is
time.
Sadie.
Yeah, exactly. So, and the way came, it just didn't sound quite right to my ear. And I'm like, I needed something else. And then Sadie Way came. And then, of course, later on in the book came Will. And I'm like, it's like another one of those things with your brain's already working 20 steps ahead of you. So like, oh, okay, that's why she needed Sadie to be Sadie Way. So
Interesting. Okay. So Alicia Collins wants to know, how do you come up with your books? Are they something you've heard or completely from you? Are they made up whole cloths from your imagination, or are they based on anything?
it's kind of most of the time it's kind of a mix. So for Sugarberry Cove, the very beginning began with a family friend had gone down to a water lantern festival in Lexington, and I was just kind of captivated with the idea of a water lantern festival where you write hopes and wishes and dreams on this lantern and set it afloat and hope that those things come true. And my brain just went, what if those wishes come true? What happens then? And then that's the story kind of tumbled into that. And I live about a block from a lake. So I'm very familiar with lake life and all the critters and things like that. We love all the birds and stuff like that on the lake. And so I knew I wanted of course, with the Water Lantern Festival, you needed water. So I'm like, well, I can do a lake for sure. And I love baking, and I would love to do what Sadie does for a living. I am not that person. I am not a YouTuber. I'm not, I
No.
just, I can barely do, I think I've done maybe 3 Instagram stories in my whole life. Like, I just can't quite seem to do it, but I would love to do something like she does, just going to hear the histories of recipes through other people's eyes. And that to me is so cool. I hope somebody does that.
That was very cool. I
Yeah.
wondered about that. I wonder if that was like a made up job or if you had
Yeah.
seen somebody doing that or, I
The, cl-
mean,
the closest thing I've found to it is that there's a guy on, I think it might be Netflix, who travels around and
mhm.
makes food with different families. Like, he goes into their house and makes the food. I've never watched the show, so I don't know if he actually hears like the family history of the recipe and things like that. But that's the closest thing I've found to what she does.
Yeah, that's an interesting job. And I
Yeah.
was amazed how much money she makes doing it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Sometimes I see
I don't,
social media salaries and I'm like, I picked the wrong line of work.
I hear you.
Yeah.
So Ann Patrick asked a related question. We were just talking about the lake and the lanterns,
Mhm.
and she asked, "Is a lantern festival something that you participate in annually? Have you ever
I've
done
never
one?"
done it. I would love to do it though, and I know there are some pre-COVID. I don't know if they're still doing them right now. Um,
Yeah.
that came pretty close. Like, Lexington's about 90 minutes from me, so I mean, next time that comes there, I definitely want to go to it. But I know there's also air lantern, like, Entangled, where they set the lanterns afloat. Um, and I wouldn't mind doing one of those either. So
Those are fun. We've
yeah,
done those sometimes. Just we buy them at the Five and Dime and do it like New Year's
yeah,
Eve or whatever. Lift
yeah.
those off.
Hmm.
Um, and I always worried. I stress about things. It's like
Yeah.
you send those things off, and I'm like, it's got to come down somewhere.
Yeah,
And
like the
and my husband's like,
environmental
no, no,
concerns,
they go
yeah.
out. I freaked
Yeah.
out every time we did it. It was fun, but I freaked out. So Marianne asks, you have quite a few cozy mysteries out and
Mhm,
also historical
mhm.
romances. I'm wondering what led you in the direction of magical realism. You may have addressed that, but
Yeah,
do
I
you have
mean,
any?
it was with, the Lucy Valentine series when I was writing landscaping mysteries, and, the publisher this has happened to me twice, decided to drop the cozy line. And so I was like, I needed to find another, series to write, and I went back and forth with my agent, and I kept going back to, Massachusetts, where I had grown up, and I just had this idea for a psychic, and I'm like, can I do that? Can I pull this off? Will it sell? Because, that wasn't really quite common back then. The supernatural kind of cozy
Right.
mystery. Um, and, luckily for me, it did. But it kind of launched my love of writing the magical into my books.
See, I have a similar thing with I have like a character who's like a guardian spirit, and that
Hmm.
whole
Yeah.
supernatural thing was. I had a hard time at first, like you know, getting that to find a home for it. But
Right.
anyway, I enjoy it too.
Yeah.
It's fun. It adds a nice element. Um, so, okay, what's next for you? What are you working on now? Will that be your next release, or is there another book in the pipeline?
Well, its next release. I'm currently working on edits for In the Middle of Hickory Lane, which will be out next summer. And after that, I mean, I have some proposals out to my editor. We'll see how that goes. You never know in this business, but hopefully they'll find a home.
Oh, I feel certain they will. Okay, so is there anything I haven't asked you that you think we should know?
I can't think of anything. I think we've covered the whole why I write about Alabama and the magic in the books. I guess that's one thing, is that I write magic because I wish that I really truly wish that there was magic in this world helping us along. So I like to believe there is, and uh, I'll keep writing about it until it happens. Darn it! So
Okay, all right. So, are you planning other locations? Like, I know you're really in love with Alabama. Do you think
yeah.
your next set? Are you going to stay with Alabama, or are
So
you
the next
planning to
book is
explore?
set in Alabama, down near the Fairhope area. Um, I Right now I'm planning on staying in Alabama, but I really feel like I need to travel a little more widely in the South to see if my love for the South is just Alabama or if it's like the whole South. Because
Right.
before all my trips to Alabama, I'd really only driven through Georgia to get to Florida. So it's like I kind of want to stop and stay and experience it and feel it. So that one's up for we'll see. We'll see.
Okay. All right. So tell us the new book that's coming out. I'm sorry, the name again?
It's called In the
Your
Middle
next
of
book?
Hickory Lane, and it should be out next July.
Okay. Can you tell
Yeah.
us anything about that, or is it all top
Um,
secret?
no, I mean, I don't think it's top secret. It's about a young woman who goes back to her father's hometown to live with her grandmother for a while. And the first day she shows up, there's bones that are found in the middle of Hickory Lane in the community garden. And that kind of sets off, lots of secrets, family secrets, old secrets, and kind of what my books have been about so far. It's loss,
Right.
love, grief, um, baking. So all my books have baking in them, and that little bit of mystery and romance, and of course the magic.
Right. I
Yeah.
find that, I'm drawn to so many different things. I end up with, well, it's kind of like a mystery with romance, or it's a romance with
Hmm.
mystery, or it's a, but it's like, it's a story.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's hard to categorize it. And I wanted to ask you that because I looked, and so the Lights of Sugarberry Cove is in. Oh, let me get
Mhm.
that. Is in what is it? Women's fiction, and then also magical realism.
Yeah,
Is that
if you
right?
go into a bookstore, you'll either find it in the fiction section or the women's fiction section if they have a women's fiction section. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, or I don't think many stores have the magical realism section, so that's generally
Right.
where you'll find it. But
Okay. All right. Well, I guess that's all the questions we have for you today. I really appreciate you coming and spending time with us. It's been a lot of fun,
okay.
and there will be probably more questions and comments if you have a chance.
Yep.
Did you join the group?
I haven't yet. I will. Yep.
Okay. If you
That's
would, and
Thursday
then
night,
you
right?
can.
Mhm.
Yeah. This will for those of you who are joining us. We are taping this actually on Tuesday afternoon when we're both alert. And it will air on Thursday evening in the group, and then folks can watch it whenever they want. But there may be more questions on the
Yeah.
post. It'll be pinned to the top for a few days, and then it'll be in there. I have like a topics section, and book of the month discussion will be the topic, and so people can go and watch it anytime. And from time to time, people may have questions for you. So if
I'm
you
happy to answer them. Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. If you'll do that, we'd
Great.
appreciate it. Thank you so much. We appreciate your
Thank
time. It's
you.
lovely to see you.
See
Hope to
you
see you
too.
at a conference when we're all
Oh
able to
my
travel
gosh.
to conferences again.
One of these days, right? One of these days.
Hopefully soon. All
Yeah.
right. Thanks so much, Heather.
Alright,
Take
thank
care.
you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.